At Kiln, we believe that on-chain is the new online and that the financial system is being rebuilt on blockchains. The best example of that are stablecoins, which today's supply surpasses 230 billion. And there is no doubt that stablecoin will revolutionize consumer and B2B payments as well as capital markets. It will change the way we exchange financial assets. So today I'm super excited to have a friend, Raagulan Pathy, or Rax for those who know him. Who is the co-founder and CEO of Kast. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Rax.
Thanks for having me here, and congrats on the new office as well. It's
Yeah,
very pretty, very grand.
we met the first time I think last year on our last office.
Yes.
And we
Yeah.
kind of upgraded there. So it's good to have you. Yeah, can you maybe present yourself a little bit and how did you fall into the crypto rabbit hole?
Sure. So I think the like most people, like my first foray into crypto was around 2015 or so, but it was just trading Bitcoin, and so I think that's the thing. Like people complain about the volatility of crypto, but it's what also gets people interested at the beginning, long before they come into all the other things that you can do in crypto. So I was like trading um, Bitcoin. I unfortunately didn't buy nearly as much as I should have, and other sort of crypto assets over time as well. And eventually, what I discovered was that I want to move from Web 2 into crypto, because previously I worked at Zoom, I worked at Facebook, I worked at Amazon, sort of all very sort of Web 2 industries. I was sort of very early to cloud software as well before moving to crypto. But I knew that like my interest in technology and my interest in finance would have to intersect. And I think crypto is obviously the best place where it does intersect. I think the issue for me personally was that I come more from a technology and building background. And so how do I go and enter crypto? Not from financial market sales sort of background, right? And so do I go and work in an exchange where they're mostly selling financial market products, or how do I go to a company to build? And I found Circle through this process of discovering where I want to go and build next. And Circle, for most who know, is the issuer of USDC, recently filed to go public. USDC is like 60 billion now plus. So yeah, I found in Circle that they were building stablecoins, and here is something that's much more infrastructure and much more related to building. And then I just went super deep down the stablecoin rabbit hole over the last 4 years, and now call myself stablecoin guy because I just like live and breathe stablecoins all day long.
And you did your own research. It's you found Circle versus the other way around.
Yeah, I when I like change companies, I always go looking at different industries and different companies and what are different people doing. And through that search, I basically narrowed down into Circle being a really good company. I reached out to that chief business officer at the time, and then started discussions with them, and they went for 6-7 months until eventually I joined Circle. Yeah.
Right. And is there a link, because it seems you worked in tech and digital infrastructure all your career. You worked in telecoms, you worked in clouds, you worked in Zoom communication online
Yeah.
through stablecoin. Is there a path, or is there a natural evolution there?
I think ultimately it is, and there's many things that a life experience I've had that ties it all together. I'm also a very avid traveler. I've traveled to 100 countries plus. I've lived in 10 different cities in my life, and so I think there's aspects of my career, but also aspects of my life which come together in stablecoins. So I think from my career perspective, I've always been on the journey of new infrastructure, which is making things that don't work very efficiently much more efficient. So cloud is an example of that. Things like Zoom are an example of that, that essentially connect people a lot better, right? Is the ultimate thing, or help people build quicker and easier. And that's ultimately what stablecoins do at its heart. It's a technology that helps people build and move money faster. In terms of my own personal experience of all the different places I've lived, I think through that, what I got was that money is very siloed country by country and really shouldn't be. The world is very connected. The internet's been around for 30 years. People can trade with nearly anyone in the world, well, theoretically, at least until the last couple of weeks with all the trade wars. But anyway, if you can trade with anyone in the world, you can connect with anyone in the world, you should be able to move money across borders very easily as well. And I think that makes very interesting thinking, especially in light of some of the things happening recently with trade wars. Yeah.
And I think you said it. You traveled in more than 100 countries in the world, and you also lived in Nigeria. It seems back in the days, working for telecom company, where you saw the issue and the blockers of receiving and sending money there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, so I was very young. I was like 22 years old, and I got this job in Nigeria to work for MTN, a South African telco. And at this time, like to give you some statistics, Nigeria had like 140 million people and something like only 500,000 telephone lines. You can imagine like just the pent up demand, right, for telco services in an economy like that. In any economy that has like less than 1% of people have phones, mobile phones, right? And I saw some crazy stuff, like when we launched and we went to like 10 million phone lines within the first sort of 1 to 2 years, um, traffic reduced in Lagos substantially because before people would drive across the city to meet with each other, and now they just pick up a phone, right? It's just things that you don't really think about, right? You never think about that's the impact of what a telephone does, right? But I think that
There's still a lot of traffic in Lagos.
there's still a lot of traffic in Lagos, but also because Nigeria's population has nearly doubled since I lived there.
That's right.
You know, so but it's an example of like if you build infrastructure, how things can become more efficient. And we always talk about it, but when you see real life examples like that, you're like, okay, like that is actually definitely true, right? And at that time, you know, obviously money was another issue as well. I used to get paid in US dollars. I remember I used to go to the side of a hotel, at one of the major hotels in Lagos, where all the money changer guys would be there, and you give them dollars and you get local naira, you know, and that's how, as an expat, when you're paid there, how you would get local currency, right? And so eventually, if you look at like stable coins, a lot of people are doing that, moving stable coins instead of like the physical cash and converting it into local currency or the other way around. It's like digitizing that process. So there's lots of things I've picked up and learned along the way about how hard infrastructure is for people who don't have infrastructure. You know, we're very lucky. I live in Singapore, I live in Paris, a very good infrastructure relatively. But that's not the norm for most people in the world, you know?
Right.
And so if you build a great infrastructure, like the impact is very outsized for large parts of the population around the world.
And that's the use case you mentioned. Before they were using cash, but now using stablecoin is one of the main use case through Kast, right? It's like using stablecoin and Kast as a way to off ramp cheaper and even like spend an amount that you wouldn't be able to spend in these countries where essentially sometimes the bank will block you, or the fees of off ramping would be 10 to 15%. Instead, they're using Kast to have a higher amounts of spending or just cheaper way to
It's just also just a simple user experience, right? The current user experience of I can get stable coins, but I'm going to get it from somewhere. And then, and those rails are not perfect. And then I've got to tie up, I got to off ramp it and then spend it on its card separately. And the user experience, I might have to go through an exchange, or I might have to go through a wallet. I might have to go through a P2P platform, which comes a whole bunch of uncertainty around who I'm dealing with. There's just so many challenges. Like the stablecoins themselves are great, but the whole way that people use them is very complex. And we're just trying to simplify that. We don't allow you to buy crypto on our platform. It's very purpose built for payments and banking style, like a banking style experience.
And before we go back to Kast, I kind of jumped on it a bit fast, but you launched a first venture. I think you had a cloud company back in the days. So
Yeah.
Kast is not the first company you launched.
Yeah, this is the second significant company, and I've tried my hand at a lot of other smaller companies along the way and done a bunch of seed investing. But yeah, I had myself and another guy co-founded a company called Laszlo back in Australia, 2010 to 2020, 2010 to 2013, like 3.5 years, and went really well, and then didn't go so well as things happen at startups. But it was just a little bit early. It was very early before cloud was even a thing, and so we were like right at the beginning of that. And I think I learned from that. Sometimes it doesn't pay to be too early as well, because, you get challenges of like, there's not a big enough market yet, raising capital is hard, and a whole bunch of other things as well.
Do you feel it's easier for an entrepreneur to build a company in Singapore than Australia?
I think in short, yes. I think Singapore is very friendly just because the amount of VCs are there. But I think over time, Australia's got better as well. Back then in like early 2010s, is either you go to like the Bay Area, like Silicon Valley, and maybe it's other parts of the US, like New York. But really getting VC funding, whether it's in Europe or Australia or Asia, was just really hard. It didn't really become easier until I would say like 2015 or so. Was when a lot more VCs popped up and started becoming active.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can still travel now to the valley from time to time.
Yes. We ran into each other just a couple of weeks ago in the valley. So yeah, I mean, eventually, I think when you get to a certain size, you will want the biggest investors, and they're still in the US. But I think venture capital is a lot more spread now. I think every country has some form of venture capital, and certain places like Singapore and London and have a pretty advanced or pretty well developed VC markets now.
That's right. Much more spread than the 2000s that that we were mentioning earlier.
Exactly. And of course, China and India as well, just because the sheer size of domestic markets as well.
Right. I want to come back to Kast, and would you mind explaining for everyone what Kast is doing and why you launched Kast in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I think if most people would know something like a Revolut or Wise or similar, I think they're available in certain countries. What they're building is an experience that is slightly better than a bank in terms of being a fintech, being a bank alternative, you could think about it, right? But they're built on the old rails of payment service licenses. They're only typically available in about 40 countries, and most of those countries are Europe, which they can generally service with one license. But the problem that stablecoins solve is for people in 150 or 170 different countries. And so what we're trying to build is a bank-like experience, but for the stablecoins, right? And so at its core, it's very simple. You can hold cash, you can have savings account, you can have a card. And we call it what we're building like better than a bank. So you could have virtual accounts where you'd be able to send money to. It actually gets converted to stablecoins. We only hold stablecoins, but to the user, it's largely, you don't know that. It's just, it's an invisible user experience pretty much. And so you can have virtual accounts, or you can have stablecoins, or you can swap from cash to stablecoins. And so think of it as like a hybrid stablecoin banking style experience. And we're also adding other things as well, like payment links. And so you can send a link to someone to pay you. This is very good for people like freelancers, for example.
Right.
We're also going to be adding local QR code payment methods in different countries as we get more popular in certain countries. Some countries, they run off like Pix in Brazil, for example, maybe UPI in India, other places they have local payment methods are very popular.
And just to pause on the payment link, which that's a super cool, exciting feature. Does someone that click on the link and want to send money to the one that sent him the link in the first place has to create a wallet?
No, that's not all. You can use it in the app right now. So, for example, you can send one to someone in Denmark, and they'll get a number of options. They might have their local bank, and they may be able to log into the local bank and just transfer money, or they can use a Visa or MasterCard, and they'll get a different rate accordingly. And the payment link will automatically adjust it accordingly. And then once you paid, the money will be sent via our partner. It will get converted into stablecoins and land in your Kast account. But the person who's sending the money, just they don't need to do anything. They just need to do a normal bank transfer or have a Visa or MasterCard.
Interesting. And which will work with your local partners and then sending money on your Kast accounts.
Yeah, exactly. You just send the payment link, they pay it. you see the money in your Kast account. Beautiful.
Right. And I think you said it's the Revolut and the new bank of the world, because they are regulated and they have license. They will be operating in a handful of countries, right? In a way, they're global, but still very much local, and they're present in less than 10 countries. Versus what it seems to me what Kast is bringing is, with stablecoin, it's a global network. It's a
Exactly.
global payments, saving, lending type of network. This could be present in 150 countries. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, like stablecoins are available to people nearly anywhere, and but these other companies, I mean, they're great. Like what they've done is amazing, but this what we call in crypto lipstick on a pig. You know, the pig being the old financial rails and services and the old licensing framework, which is very country by country. They're still going through the process of getting licenses country by country for payment rails, etc. Right? They're making the experience better, but at the back end, it's still using the old payment rails that a bank and everyone else uses. Right? They're not using stablecoin rails, which is what we're using primarily. So we're doing this hybrid between stablecoin rails and our partners helping do power payment links and virtual accounts, etc. But it's moving us towards a future where it'll be primarily on stablecoins, and I think that is our next product, which we hope to release in about 3-4 months, is actually a separate wallet, which would be a Kast wallet. We think that's the way we're thinking about it, and that Kast wallet would be just stable coins. It wouldn't have this sort of, you probably be able to send and receive money through virtual accounts, etc. But it would be a more focused self-custodial wallet experience. Right. It would be quite different.
Yeah, right. For so you wouldn't have like to pass KYC. You can onboard. I mean, through KYC was the on ramp, but you could also onboard by just receiving stable coins directly on the wallets.
Yeah, exactly. It's a self-custodial wallet. It starts off with no KYC. You can deposit your stablecoins there, multiple stablecoins, multiple chains. It's a stablecoin only wallet, so it doesn't allow you to, hold NFTs or do a whole bunch of these other things. It's wholly focused on stablecoins. And then eventually we'll add other things. Now, if you want to add rails for bringing money in and out, then yes, you can KYC and you can do that. But you can also just use it as pure play stablecoin custodial wallet. And the main reason is that we think no one has built a great experience around just pure stablecoins as a wallet itself. Even the other wallets today, which are really great, whether it's like a Phantom or Soulflare or, there's so many, they're awesome, but they're
Very generous wallets, right? Like you can do NFTs, you can do
exactly. They're trading focused, right? Trading for wallets as opposed to payment utility focused wallets,
right? Yeah, and it's funny because the only good version of a stablecoin wallet I've seen is MiniPay. Have you seen MiniPay?
Yeah.
Very much centered in Africa, and but that's the only one, and it's again very much centered in Africa for now. So yeah, it seems that there's definitely a gap in the market, and billions of users that could potentially use that as wallet, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think users need a way. We're seeing particular interest from the developed markets as well for people to look for yields, high yields, especially now that like we're sitting at 4.25 to 4.5%. That's pricing in 5 rate cuts. So we're sitting at 3% potentially by the end of the year. And then suddenly people go, well, I kind of want more yield somewhere else. And our view is not to expose people to what I would call dangerous or unsustainable yields. The crazy stuff you see during bull markets of like random 20%, 40%, no idea how they make the underlying yield. But I think like DeFi has hit a spot where there's enough, I would say, sophisticated players who are legitimate, who have been tried and tested, platforms such as Aave, and there's many others as well, you guys would know.
Yep.
And we think those yields are more sustainable and safe, and we would like to give people access to those yields. We don't want to do it in the main Kast app, because the main Kast app is meant to have a very safe and secure and stable banking-like experience. And we don't want to commingle for now that experience with what I would say is like more of a DeFi high yield experience, and that's why we're building a separate wallet. But at the same time, the wallet, we don't want it to become just like every other wallet. So we want to keep it focused on stablecoins.
That's right. That's right. And then on payment, receiving and savings and yield will be an add-on, but it's not the core feature of the experience in the wallet.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where we might be collaborating
Yes, we will definitely be collaborating
in the
and
future.
expanding our partnership. Yeah.
I want to come back to what you mentioned on regulation, and it seems today, and it's advancing towards that stablecoins are not regulated. And even in the US, it seems that now stablecoins might be considered as a utility, to security. So how do you see this regulation evolving, and do you think Kast as a company might be licensed in 5 to 10 years?
So we're licensed today. We already have a bunch of digital asset licenses, and so that's how so our licensing framework is we have our own licenses, and we also rely on the licensing of partners, right?
Right.
And so, for example, if a partner is collecting cash from someone and converting into stablecoins, they hold the licenses locally,
Right.
to be able to do that, and then they give the stablecoins to us, and then we hold the stablecoins primarily as a licensed custodian, and we also use the licenses of our custodians like BitGo underneath as well.
Right.
And we also have our own digital asset licenses. We also have money transmission licenses as well, to be able to help onboard with the partners. So it's not that we're not licensed; we are actually licensed quite heavily, and we actually have a whole team around expanding our licenses. It's just that our model for licensing is different to be able to allow us to go global quicker. That we also rely upon our partners' licenses to help basically connect the world a lot quicker than just doing it all ourselves.
Right. So you connect with partners that have licenses themselves. Sometimes you have licenses to onboard some partners in some geographies, but by design, because you hold stablecoins on non-custodial wallets, you don't have to be licensed for these.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex answer because it also depends on the country,
Yes.
the users coming from, and we have a whole matrix around how do we do all this.
Yeah.
But generally, we believe in being more licensed than less licensed.
Right.
It's just which of the licenses that are purpose fit for what we're trying to do. I don't think to answer your question more fully, I don't think the perfect licensing exists today.
Right.
But then when I started in stablecoins, there was no stablecoin licensing or anything in the framework. People were using a mix of licenses and money transmission and other licenses to achieve the utility of a stablecoin. And similarly, I don't think there's a perfect license for what we're trying to do today, but there will be in 3 to 5 years' time, and we're working with regulators to get there. But in the interim, we're using a mix of different licenses to construct it in a way that is still very licensed and still very secure, and still, we're opening ourselves up to third-party audit and all those great things. But we're working towards the perfect license still. Yeah.
Right.
On the wallet side, it would be much more self-custodial, and that's just down to how it's a wallet. Sort of the users will hold the assets, and we won't hold the keys per se. And so that's different. That will be less licensed per se, but that's not different to any other self-custodial wallet.
And because the global nature of stablecoins, do you feel they will be at some point a global license or global?
There's a few that are working
Framework?
towards that. Yeah. There's a few that are working towards that. We see good progress out of the UAE and other places, and ultimately that's what you need. But there's still a lot of things we do. Like we still monitor for like sanctioned wallets. We still, there's still going to be places and holders of stablecoins which you don't want to interact with,
For sure.
because for a whole bunch of reasons. And we don't. We still trace and make sure that we don't have.
Even on the non-custodial wallet, you will still
On the non-custodial wallet, we
will still trace. Yeah, try to.
It's a little bit harder,
For sure, to block.
because we don't own the keys and somebody else owns the keys. So we have to have a different framework for it. But on the custodial side and our current side, we still definitely trace. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I want to deep dive into the users of Kast. Do you see a specific geography where you have a lot of demand, and after would love to understand what are the major use cases of people using Kast today?
Yeah, so I think our hot 3 areas of demand are the Middle East, um, the US, and Latin America, and of course Asia as well, because that's where we were born effectively. But yeah, these are the sort of like the top 3 areas.
Still the US, whereas they have a very efficient financial system, and the dollar is very strong there. And
Yeah, I think for the US, it's primarily a Web3 type of user,
right,
who is looking for an turnip because their banking sucks for one reason or another. And so that's the main use case for the US. For the others, it's more a stablecoin use case because they don't trust their currency, or they have banking issues or money movement issues, etc. So that's the two, to answer your question around the use cases. There's a kind of person who doesn't have access to dollar banking, that wants dollar banking and lives in another region, and all their dollar banking is very constrained. It's very hard to move money, or very hard to receive money, etc. And that's very common in Latin America and the Middle East, both big dollar markets, where they're getting dollars for exports and other things, but need a more efficient way to move money. And so, yeah, that's the kind of user who has stablecoins already in these regions. And then there's the Web3 user who is looking for a different way to off-ramp it in the US. I would say that the third one that's emerging as a product gets better is that we are also looking at people who are remote workers, who live globally, who want a banking-like solution because it's hard to get a bank account in many of the places they used to go to get an account before.
so the first one are Web3 crypto power user.
Yeah.
That want to stay in crypto, stay in stables, and off ramp it in a easy, seamless way.
Exactly.
The second one you mentioned are the emerging markets that need dollar, and it's an easy way as well to off ramp it versus their local banking system that's usually broken.
Exactly.
And the third one are the remote first type of like companies. So it's Kast business.
Yeah, exactly. Remote first global companies, and people who are freelancers and creators and others who operate, sell services in the global economy.
Which of the three, one of the three you're most excited about, and you think will have the major
The
growth?
way that we think about it is that the Web3 users are the greatest amount today. Let's say they're like 60%. Then I would say like 30% are the next layer, which is the emerging market users. And then the 10% are the remote worker global first users. By the way, the first two are all pretty global first anyway. So it's not like a perfect separation. Sometimes they fit into multiple buckets. But the major thing I think is that last 10% will become more than 50% over the years to come. Just as you just think about all your friends and how many people, as they switch and change jobs, are eventually landing in a new company that's built global first. They may not be working for like a local company in the country that they're living in,
Right.
And eventually more and more people end up working for these companies, right? And most companies that are born today, who are at least like, maybe not manufacturing, but like, like services companies, will be global first just because you need talent, and the talent's all over the place. It's not necessarily in one place.
Yep. And Kiln, I mean, Kiln is a very good example of that. Having employees in several countries, but it seems that it would be growing the B2B part or the business part of the business, where you still need to nail the first two buckets, right? Like the retail part, grow the user experience, and potentially then going to other features that businesses will need while using Kast.
Yeah, we're going to build a B2B SME version. We wanted to start it now in Q2. We're probably going to delay it to end of Q3 or Q4, only because we're more focused on bringing this wallet product to market and finishing our consumer product to be a lot more fully featured. And then, like you said, it just naturally follows on that there will be users who are already asking us for B2B and business, and then that will get bigger and bigger. And as they see more features, they're like, can you give us a business version? And it becomes easy for us to build work.
And it seems because you had a very B2B experience in the past, in your background and in your past experiences. So that's also a natural.
It is a natural evolution.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I learned in being, in decades of B2B.
Right.
And that is that you really want a self-service / consumer front end to allow people to come to you,
Right.
rather than you having to find them all the time. Because sales is really hard. And I think it's even harder today because there's like AI and everyone's inbox is smashed with people reaching out, and it's almost got harder, right? And so if you have a product that people could just pick up and use, either for themselves or even for their small company, and they can self-service it and they can onboard themselves and they can use a lot of features, and then you just come along to help them grow their usage, that is way better than having a product where you have to sell them B2B from day one. B2B from day one is really hard.
So B2C to B.
Exactly.
Because a lot of these SMEs could come from using Kast as a consumer in the first place, and you also have direct relationship with consumer users, which has a lot of value, right?
Exactly. We often will get someone who's using it for themselves, and they're in a smaller company, and they're like, "Hey, can we bring Kast into the whole company because it's so useful?" That one person gets it, the others don't know it yet, but he or she is evangelizing Kast to that company effectively.
Right.
That's a very different proposition to if we just had a B2B business and we have to convince people.
One at a time. You need to like swell steam and
Exactly.
a full floor.
I've done that before, and
Yeah.
it's great. But even for example, when I was scaling Zoom, or even when I was scaling AWS is a self-service product at the beginning. It's not like you just sign up to it and build it, and they can do a lot of stuff. The developers can do a lot of stuff before you need sales help. Same thing with Zoom. You could just start a Zoom account. You could add a few more people to it until you needed sales help. And that's the ideal go-to-market scenario when you're building a B2B business. Yeah.
Right. One thing actually about growing network effects and direct relationship with the end user in crypto that is often used is a token.
Yeah.
And as I was looking at this beautiful drawing that I have here, I think you posted on social media, so this is not a secret. Can you come back to this vision that you have of your business and the market in 5 to 10 years, and is there a place for a Kast token in that vision?
There is definitely a place for a token. I think a token does a couple of things. I think firstly, a token builds incredible community if it's done correctly.
Right.
I think most people who launch a token are doing it for a pump and dump of some sort. I hate to say that, but that's a reality. I think a lot of crypto people don't have a long vision for where their product will go. I had a vision of what our product would look like till 2030 or 2035. And now in the process of rewriting that vision for what it'll look like in 2050. So I'm thinking about this very long term, right? Extremely long term. And so I have no interest in launching a token and it going up and it going down and it crashing my vision for what this will look like over a long time, right?
Yeah, because you could build a sustainable business and essentially crash this business if you're thinking short term just on the
Exactly. Now, a lot of people then therefore ask that why bother having a token or a point scheme at all, right? But my view is that you can build the right token and you can build the right point scheme that does what the intention of what a point scheme was meant to do back in the day. Back in the day, it would be like you release a product and people come and use the product. And when they use the product, they get points early on because they're helping you build that. They feel like they're part of a community. They're helping you build that product over a long period, and they get rewarded for it by being there early, right? And then the community gets strengthened and evangelized by the fact that they've got points and eventually a token, right? And so I think you can use all the right parts of it for a token, especially in a direct-to-consumer platform, to build your ecosystem without crashing, without trying to create the token mechanics. And we're going to be doing very unusual things in our token, which will make sure that users align with us for the very long term. And it'll completely not be the platform for people to come and collect points and dump them. Right? In fact, the way that we're thinking about the mechanism will not reward that at all.
Right.
So it's not, if you want to come and token farm and leave, you just won't get that opportunity with us.
Right.
But if you're here for the long term, build a community with us, evangelize us, and think about this over the long term.
And that's how you started with points, and that's how you get points in the Kast ecosystem today, right?
Exactly. And just to sort of like talk through that little drawing.
Yeah, please.
So the way that I thought about this is how do you build product after product until you eventually swallow up a whole ecosystem, right? And so the first way that we thought about it was, okay, first we will have a simple card product for stablecoins. You deposit stablecoins, you spend it. Then you build what we're calling better than a bank, which is essentially, a hybrid virtual account and a bank and card, etc. Then we will build wallets, and with that wallet, we're also launching 2 stablecoins, USDK and USDKY, which have become they actually work together as a stack. It's a wallet, a stablecoin, and a protocol, and it's think of it like a simplification platform. You can deposit any of the legit stablecoins, USDC, USDT, and you can take them out multi-chain, and that in the middle you just see $1. So it's extremely simple. It simplifies many aspects of the user experience. You don't have the concept of gas, none of this other stuff, right? And eventually we'll build our own L2 as well.
Just before the L2, just to pause on the USDK. Yeah, can you would it be natively yielding? Do you work with partners there?
Yeah, we're working with M0 Labs to launch it.
Yep.
And the one version will be more payments. It won't have the yield, but then the USDKY will be the savings yield version.
Right.
The reason why the first one doesn't have the yield is because we are taking the yield and trying to solve for other problems that the user has. Problems like having to pay gas, paying, etc. So we're just essentially offsetting the revenue we collect from that to offset the other things the user usually has to pay for bridging, swapping fees, gas fees, all of that, to simplify the user experience. So it's not because we're greedy about the yield, so we want to simplify it. So you just deposit stablecoins, you see $1, you don't have to fund, you don't have to do most of the mess that you have to do today. Right. And that's our vision.
And you, before going back to the L2, but you announced your partnership with Bridge. Is it, does it fit into this ecosystem where you can come with any essentially stablecoin, and then it transfers to USDK and USDKY if you start to save it?
We may our Bridge partnership is primarily for on-ramping virtual accounts in the US, and we may expand that into cards as well.
Okay.
And we may collaborate on parts of this, but we actually plan to build a lot of this stuff ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we feel that we have the expertise to do it. We also feel like we can do it in a much more DeFi, decentralized, focused way,
right?
Using on-chain protocols, etc. Right. We also think it's important for us to own some of this infrastructure that we build, so that people understand that we're not just a company wrapping together services in a user experience, which you could argue that's what we're doing today. We have a beautiful user experience, but how much of the stack do we own? Right. Well, our plan is to build the underlying infrastructure that powers that amazing user experience, so that it powers our own user experience, but in the future, it could also power others' user experiences.
Right. Right. Yeah. Sorry. And you were saying the ultimate goal of that 5 to 10 years plan is potentially launching your own settlement layer, your own L2?
Yes. And I think it's just not for the fact that I want to launch another L2. It's like hundreds of them out there. And I don't know.
You first need your own event, then your own token, then your first chain, right?
Yeah. I think the main reason we want to build our L2 is because stablecoins are dumb. And I will say this in the most polite way as a stablecoin guy. Stablecoins are beautiful because I can send you money. You send me your wallet address, I send it to you. But they're dumb in the way that they don't do a lot of things that payment networks do. For example, let's say you were running the Uber company and you needed to charge me for an Uber ride, right? Now, the way it works today is that Uber will take an authorization of, say, $30, and then the ride will come to $23, and then they'll release it and they'll give you back the other $7, right? In stablecoins, this would be really hard to do because it's either you send me the money and then I send it back, or I just have to trust that you send me the money after the ride. So payments actually, like, as cumbersome and expensive as they have a lot of smarts that have been built in over decades and decades and decades, which Visa and MasterCard have actually done a pretty good job of doing. And people bash Visa and MasterCard because of what they think is the fees. The reality is Visa and MasterCard only keep a small amount of those fees. A lot of the fees are for other participants in that ecosystem, right? And they have built a lot of smarts into their payment chains per se. And so I think for stablecoins that reach the ultimate nexus of being really efficient for payments amongst millions, hundreds of millions or billions of people, you have to build these smarts in so that they become usable, right? So you can go to a hotel and you can say, oh, I've got my 2 night stay here is $250 a night, $500. They will charge you the extra $200 for incidentals. They take $700 from your stablecoin balance, and then they give you back what you haven't used. These sort of concepts, and also refunds, and also whitelist, because you may not, as a business, want to take money from everyone. There might be dodgy people that try to send you money. So there's so many other things involved, which we have to build smarts around, which is ultimately why we want to build our own chain. But we'll do it at the right time. We're not going to rush into it.
And you feel because, for example, a Uber driver that gives you a ride, and the money is actually released to the driver once it gets you to point B, or an hotel that would get you credit card information as a deposit, because if you get to the minibar, then they can charge you extra if you haven't paid it directly. Do you feel, because it seems that smart contracts are meant and exist for that, but do you feel you will build a set of smart contract on this chain, or it could be a set of core feature that are at the chain level?
We are debating this exact thing right now as to how we construct it. But I think ultimately you're going to have it at the chain level to an extent. And you're going to have things that people can build underneath it to make it composable and usable, right? So we're still thinking through the architecture of it. Right. But I will tell you, the one thing that's different about us is that we're scaling the amount of stablecoin users for payments. And so the reason why we'll wait is that in a couple of years, we will be processing literally billions of dollars, potentially a month, in stablecoin payments. We will see people's exact usage patterns, right? And literally we would have tens of millions of payments per month, right? And so that gives us the opportunity to go and build something that's relevant, that people actually need, so they could actually move some of these payments from a Visa or MasterCard or other network to a stablecoin rail. The difference you see with other L2s is that they're trying to do this artificially, right? They just go, hey, I want to build an L2. They will present you a beautiful deck, a beautiful thesis. But the thesis is mostly because I want to pump a token. And secondly, because they have, they think of the world in a theoretical way, right? But they don't have the real world experience or the users to actually turn that thesis into something real. They also have this cold start problem of like, okay, how do we get users onto this platform? And so they try to just throw out money and tokens to incentivize people. Versus we're thinking, and think of that as like the top-down approach, right? We're thinking of this from the bottom-up approach. We get users, we get them using our platform, they use more and more of our services, we see their behavior, we see their problems, and then we build a chain to solve the problems that haven't been solved. Right? Which is a very different approach, which is not in any rush to do it, but ultimately we think will be a lot more sustainable, because when a chain appears, it's going to be useful for people, right? Not just incentivizing people to use the chain, but it's actually useful for people.
And like launch a token to raise more cash because you're well capitalized, and you're already profitable, making money as a company, but
Exactly.
you do it to grow your community, essentially, and to give back, right? Yeah,
exactly. To grow the community, to create strength in the community, to help grow the ecosystem, because a lot of the on-chain ecosystem will be interacting with the token as well over time. And so that's the way that we're thinking about it. Extremely long-term, don't jeopardize the business. The main business have call it the fintech side that we've built so far, have real revenues, real profitable company, nothing inorganic about it at all, and then build the on-chain side to be a accelerate of what the future of payments will look like on-chain, as opposed to just, fluff and incentives that a lot of others are doing. Yeah.
That's super exciting. Mindful of time, maybe one or two last questions. First of all, are there any other product features or things you'd like to announce about Casts, or things you're excited about what you're building?
I think the most exciting thing for us is going to be this on-chain, the stablecoin wallet. Right? I don't think people understand how many problems there are to be solved if you can fix them in the right way in a stablecoin first wallet. A lot of people hold stablecoins today, but they're still extremely complex. And I think our focus is on building that and getting that to market in the next sort of 3-4 months. We have to solve a lot of problems to get it done if we want the user experience to be simple. But when it's done, I think a lot of people, initially in crypto, but eventually otherwise, will hold a Kast stablecoin wallet because it would just be just a superior user experience they won't find anywhere else, right? The ability to have a self-custodial wallet where you can bring multiple stablecoins to multiple chains and take out multiple stablecoins to multiple chains with a very simple swap fee and no gas. That I think will be really amazing. And then we'll build extra features on that, such as like being able to use that wallet with Apple Pay and things like that, right? And so that to me, it's very important we prove ourselves out as an on-chain first company. Even though our product uses stablecoins today, it is still a fintech product in many ways. Our focus on building an on-chain product and proving that we have amazing engineers and an amazing focus on user experience and delivering this stablecoin wallet, to me, is probably the most important thing for our company in the next 6 months. And in a couple of days, by the time this podcast is out, we would have announced our 2 stablecoins, USDK and USDKY, partnering with M0 Labs and on the Solana chain as well. And so, that's the building blocks of what we're building, but it's going to be much bigger. And the vision, I think people will see that picture starting to come to life as to what our ecosystem of products is going to look like.
And that's super exciting. And I wanted just maybe before I ask you this last opening question, looking at the chains you support, it seems Solana and Ethereum are the 2 chains you support. How do you see chain support in general? Will it expand with the wallets? But how do you see chains?
We actually support quite a few other chains already. So we use Tron. We support Tron. Tron has the second largest amount of volume of stablecoins.
Right.
Then for whatever heat they give Justin, personally, I'm a fan of Justin. I think he's done an amazing job on executing.
He found product market fit, right?
He's found product market fit, He's absolutely nailed it in terms of stablecoins product market fit on Tron.
Right.
And he had that vision early and he executed on, and that's undeniable. Right. I love Solana, but I also honestly a big fan of Justin and what he's done with Tron.
Right.
And there's Ethereum, and we plan on supporting quite a few other chains. We already support Polygon. I think we support Arbitrum now, and we're going to be supporting a whole bunch.
And sorry, when I was thinking of all the chains, I was thinking, do you look at like other non-EVM chains apart from Solana and Tron, which is an EVM, but you could argue that
I don't look. There's a lot of chains out there, right? Is there much use to many of them?
Right.
It's pretty questionable.
Yeah.
The thing is that Solana and Tron have the most utility users.
Mm-hmm.
Tens of millions of users. They have both have. Solana has I think $12 or $13 billion of stablecoins. Tron has nearly over $60 billion of stablecoins. And so they have PMF, they have users, there are people sending each other money, there are people using stablecoins for trading and buying NFTs and everyday utility use cases. And I just don't know how others can maybe be app chains, or which will have a specific use case. But I think it's pretty challenging for other chains today. As much as I know people from many of the other chains and I love them, I just think that they're just so far behind these two that it's hard to catch, and it's questionable whether you really need another one, you know?
Right.
So even, for example, when we think about building our chain, we don't really want to build like another chain. If we can do it on Solana in some sort of, you call it an L2, but it's actually a mix of smart contracts or something like that, that would be our preference. Like we
And
don't,
that's the debate you have. It's like, do you need a layer that sits on top of Solana or Ethereum, or do you have a set of smart contract? But at least what you want is fixing problem for the end users and capturing a part of the value chain.
exactly. We want to fix the problems for the end users. We want to create solutions. We don't want to create a chain for the sake of creating another chain. That is not my method. And that's partly because there is another hundreds of chains that I don't know if people will ever use. And I think a lot of these chains are going to just die. I think a lot of them are dead already, right? Especially the ones that, if you're coming up now, like to acquire users, it's so hard, There's some ones that have been around for a while, like, like Stellar is doing a good job in terms of like real world movement of money. They got this partnership with MoneyGram. And so there's others that are doing a really good job in specific areas, but they've been around for a while. They have an ecosystem, they have partnerships and others ready. If we're building a chain now, geez, that's hard work.
You could argue it's the application time, and it's the onboarding new users time versus like building another one that will be.
Yeah, just build a layer on top and yeah. And I think also the thing is that method of building infrastructure first, as opposed to focusing on just capturing users first, is getting a bit tired and old, right? In crypto.
That's right.
Our view is just go and get the users first, get them to do real shit, and then build a infrastructure solution for them where one doesn't exist today. Not build the infrastructure solution and then go looking for the users.
And pump with tokens, expecting it's like collecting people using.
I mean, like people in crypto, we love our hopium on different tokens and stuff. So I get it. But I think considering how easy it is to create a token on pump.fun these days, and then there's millions of tokens, like there's an easier way to pump a token if you want to make money that way than going and trying to build other stuff. Yeah.
Maybe last question. What are you excited about these days? It could be in crypto, in tech, or whatever else.
For me, I think the just like flattening of the world via stablecoins just has so much momentum. I've been in stablecoins for 4 years, but so really in the last 6 months that it's got really hot. It's exciting because like you're seeing the market action with crypto. It goes up, it goes down, and it's going to keep doing that. But I think finally we're at this point where we're finding real product market fit around real things, right? And I think a lot of those real things are happening in the stablecoin space. They're also happening in the DeFi space. I think DeFi had its up and it's down, and I think it's definitely coming back. And we're seeing people come up with real interesting use cases for DeFi as well. And so to me, these two things have a lot of runway, and they're becoming decoupled from market cycles, and they're going to consistently grow for the next 5 to 10 years or more. And that's exciting because then you don't have to live and die by the bull and bear market of crypto, right? And so that to me is good because I'm a long-term thinker. So it allows me to keep building long-term rather than focusing on like the hype or something that's happened, shorter, Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't agree more on that, because if you look, for example, at stablecoin supply, definitely completely uncorrelated of the crypto market and even the macro markets. It's just like it's growing, right?
Yeah.
It kept growing for the past 2 months, where it's like you couldn't say otherwise of like Ethereum and Solana.
Yeah, and that'll, I think, fuel DeFi as well, but different types of DeFi. Obviously, the ones that are related to crypto prices, and that's how they get their yield a little bit less so, but other parts of DeFi, I think, will grow with that as well.
Yes, the ones that are linked to stablecoin and stablecoin yield in general, right?
And I think the final one I would mention is just like AI. Obviously, it's overhyped in some ways, but it is coming to this point of becoming quite useful. And I think a lot of the AI agents today are kind of they look really good when you see some marketing video on it, but not that many people are using it. But there is a world in which I don't want to do a lot of stuff that I would do today, from lodging expenses to booking a hotel. And I think the magic of adding stablecoins to a really good AI agent, I don't think it's there, but we're also going to be, adding more open APIs so agents can use our stablecoins. We're still thinking about how to do that. And so I think there's an opportunity around that as well, which is not quite there yet, but I think maybe in 2 or 3 years could be quite interesting, where essentially an agent is going off and paying your phone bills and all these things that are just I call really annoying parts of life, which don't really add much value, but you've got to get done. Then an AI agent with a bit of your money to hand can go off and do things.
That's interesting. So you'll be on the Kast app and you will ask your agents, can you please book this hotel for me and as well as this trip using my balance. I give you the rights to it and then it sets some,
Yeah, exactly. And here's you can spend up to $1,000 and this is the framework and send me the name of the hotel before you book it. And you press done, and then the agent goes off and uses your stablecoins to go and book it. This, of course, requires participation from the merchant side and a few other things. But I think that world will be here a lot quicker than we think in the next sort of 2 or 3 years. If you asked me last year or the year before,
you would say,
I would be like, yes, but it's going to take forever for these merchants to create the authorizations and accept it and all this stuff. But I think now it's got the momentum. So in the next 2, 3 years, we'll see that.
Because I guess like ChatGPT and the other AI use cases explain the world that it's here already, right?
Yeah, it's here already. It's just I think the AI side has got here quicker. It's just that merchants accepting the stable coins and interacting with them and trusting the AI agents, etc. It's just a mind change that they have to go through. But I think surprising me that they're going through that change quicker. It's still only 1% how they've got their head around it, but I think they're going to get their head around it quicker than I expected. Yeah,
great. Rags, thanks for coming on the podcast. It's incredible to see what you're building with Kast and how fast you're evolving and expanding the stablecoin supply with new users using your app and being on chain every day. So yeah, thank you for coming again.
Thank you for having me in this beautiful room, and congratulations again on the new office. So
thanks.